In this lesson, we're going to finally finish introducing TypeScript into all our Vue components. So the next component will be timeline item component. We have done this so many times, so I'm basically going to do the same steps as always by adding length attribute to the script tag, and then start typing props for this component. It accepts only one prop called timeline item, and the type of this prop will be timeline item interface. Let's not forget to import this interface. Let's remove unused imports from here, as well as this commented code. And just to remind you how a timeline item component looks like in the browser, we can see it on the timeline page. So this component is responsible for rendering individual list elements of our timeline. The next component we're gonna work on will be component called timeline stopwatch. This component is located inside timeline item component, and this one is responsible for showing the stopwatch. The process will be completely the same. I'll open up timeline stopwatch component in my editor and start with adding attribute length to this script tag, and then I'll extract the definition of the props and assign dynamic type argument. For this define props call, we can actually use the same declaration for props, just like we have used inside timeline item component. So I'm gonna copy over this declaration from here and paste it inside timeline stopwatch component. Let's import the custom timeline item type into this component, remove this unused code, and rearrange import statements a bit. And finally, this was the last component from the components folder, but we also have components that are responsible for showing individual pages. They are located inside pages folder. So in our application we have 3 pages and 3 page components to represent each page. And just because page components are usually high-level components that combine other components, there is not much logic present in these components, so it will be pretty easy to introduce TypeScript in these components. I'll just have to add length attribute with the value ts, and it will be enough. Move on to the next page component, the progress. Same thing goes here. I'm going to add attribute length with the value ts, and that's basically it. The next page component is called the timeline. Here I'm gonna follow the same procedure by adding attribute called length and rearrange import statements a little bit. And we almost forgot about one more component in our application. This is the root component called app.view. In this component there is not much to type either, so I'm going to assign attribute length with the value ts, and that will be it. So since we have already introduced TypeScript into all Vue components, there are several validation functions which are currently unused that we can remove. So I'm gonna open up validators.ts, go through all these functions and remove those that are not used anymore. Such functions are isTimelineItemValid, as well as isActivityValid. Same goes with isOurValid function. And if we'll scroll down to the end of this file, we can actually see here we have a couple of functions that are deemed, which indicates that these functions are not used as well. So I'm going to remove all these functions too. And at the top of this file, we can see that some constants are no longer used. We can get rid of them. As we can see, TypeScript has made many of those validation functions no longer necessary anymore. And this is another benefit of using TypeScript, that it allows us to write much less code in many scenarios. So at this point, we'll finish this lesson. Let's continue working on the project in the next one.